Greetings and salutations. How are you, my friend?
Hi there, Doru. Yes, good.
Um, Friends, we have again Dr. Graeme Finlay in our midst. And it's my privilege once again to continue buzzing him, cornering him to see more details, more insights in relation to his beautiful poetic narrative of everything, where as a Christian and a scientist, genuine scientist and genuine Christian, Graeme undertakes to reflect upon God and the creation and ourselves in a way that is, well, I think, uniquely his. And although we might have read, attempts at bringing together faith perspectives and sound science, more or less, yeah, in inspiring ways. He is definitely inspiring. And there's one thing that I have to say. It shows what more recently scholars call the virtues, the importance of science-engaged theology. And Graeme is uniquely qualified for this task as a scientist and a theologian. And it is a delight to read the poem, the appendix to his fourth article published in the ISCAS journal, Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology, but also to listen to his interpretation of the poem, of the appendix to the article. Just a refresher, I thought it would be good to remind our viewers, where they could find the article. So this is CPOSAT, not very inspiring as an acronym, but Christian Perspectives on Science and Technology. We are already at volume 3, but you can still see number 2 here, because the whole 2023 issue is available for download or reading online, as you will, for free. So ours is an open access journal, but if you go to browse, well, you see a rich menu. There's also book reviews. You go to current articles, and these are the articles that were published this year. By the way, sorry, Graeme, for my moment of promo. This year, the journal will also host a special issue dedicated to artificial and spiritual intelligence, guest edited by Fraser Watts and Marius Dorobantu on behalf of a group of researchers that worked together for a number of years under the auspices of the International Society for Science and Religion. And I think they concluded last year their project that was financed from one of the Templeton Foundations, don't remember now. And they concluded with a conference, and we will be seeing soon enough the first articles, because they're in production, that will be part of that special issue. Just this morning, we have uploaded another article, but what we are interested in is Graeme's article. This is the fourth one he published in the ISCAS journal. So the Primal Testament, parallels between evolutionary and biblical history. And as I said, it can be read on the spot as a web page. But for more demanding readers who would like to engage the article critically, scholarly, it can be downloaded I did that already, and I have it here. Again, for those who might see this recording first, this is actually the fourth one. See here, it's part of the playlist conversations. So hosted by the Australian Institute for Orthodox Christian Studies, and you see here the last three conversations together with Graeme, and it has been a delight so far, and an inspiration for me. I mean, there's so much we learn from people like him who straddle a number of scholarly avenues and perceptions of reality.
You're too kind, Doru.
I'm not kind at all. It's, actually, why do you reckon I have invited you? I mean, the article is amazing, but for those of us who are more lyrically inclined or poetically inclined, it's great to be able to see the message of the same article translated poetically in that narrative of everything. So we did already a number of stanzas, and now we are down to evolution. Graeme, floor is yours.
Right, maybe I should just make a few explanatory comments before I read some of this stuff to make it a little more interpretable.
Yes, please.
One of the wonders of biology is the stability of the genetic material, DNA. And it has to be it's one of these things which has to be very finely balanced for life to occur. If DNA was too stable, then life would never develop. There would be no variation. There would be no change. If it was not sufficiently stable, then there could be no life because there would be an intolerable burden of disease and abnormalities which are incompatible with life. So this very stable molecule, nevertheless, is just at this fine point, this balance point, where life can progress without an intolerable burden of sickness. So that's the first point I make here. Secondly, sorry, one other thing. I talk about mutations, and of course there are a large number of different mutations in our DNA. But I'm exceedingly selective in the ones I talk about, which are jumping genes, which are semi-autonomous agents, which seem to live in most genomes, and viruses, retroviruses. And I've selected these because they mutate DNA, they change DNA in ways which are very complex. They're getting well understood as far as the mechanisms are concerned. But each time they change DNA, they do so in a very unique way. So that if any two species contains one of these mutations, we can be fairly sure that they inherited them from a previous common ancestor. So for this reason, they are incredibly powerful markers of phylogenetic change. So I just thought I'd mention these two things. One other thing, I mentioned the terms promoters and enhancers. These are aspects of our DNA which give very subtle and specific control on when genes should be activated, in what cell, at what time, to what extent. So very delicate control of gene expression required to make creatures as complicated as we are. So having just explained those things, then I thought perhaps maybe we could read one of the stanzas coming.
Before you do so, you know, the first thing you said about this sort of balancing act of the
Yes,
DNA.
fine-tuning.
Uh,
Yes.
I mean, I didn't realize, I didn't go that far because I'm obsessed with the cosmology.
Mm.
And yeah, it's the fine-tuning of the universe. We have it replicated
Yes.
on this micro level uh,
Yes.
of our genes,
Yes.
of DNA. Wow. So the so-called constants of nature, or the big numbers, the so-called invariables that make possible not only the structure, size, whatever, properties of the universe, but also, yeah, this kind of internal
Yes. The chemistry of our life.
ongoing phenomenon within
Yes.
life and ourselves. This is all, like a, yeah, fine-tune organization of everything that is,
Out
and
of a blueprint.
we find it everywhere.
Yes.
Wow. So look, I'm not trying to uh, bring up here the topic of uh, a designer that does everything, and this eliminates what usually people call randomness and stuff like that. But this fine tuning shows that even though there might be or is something random to nature, whether alive or not, uh, there's something that regulates randomness to behave in a way that makes life possible.
Randomness occurs within constrained limits, directing limits. Yeah. Yeah. And you've brought up this issue of chance and necessity, which I believe the Greeks developed, but it was popularized more recently by Jacques Monod, who was an atheist. But it does indicate that the universe is so constituted that there is both freedom and direction, which is, we talked about this last time, but we're getting closer to it now when we talk about DNA.
You see, this is what actually stuns me, amazes me, because my mind is set on physics, cosmology, stuff like that. And I didn't realize that we can have the same kind of discussion uh, regarding anything, everything. It's not just, particle physics or the cosmos at large. And wow.
Yes.
See, you have already shocked me. Let's let's return to, wait,
Okay.
my ignorance.
Let's hope we can do this. Okay. So evolution. DNA embodies genetic information. Finely tuned stability sustains speciation. If too high, life will forego needed adaptation. If too low, life fails by inborn debilitation. Variants arise from changed sequence of bases. Transposons and viruses, mutagen aces, colonize host genomes at sites randomly placed. A gene control circuitry is facilely replaced. A crucial question: whence promoters and enhancers? Copy-paste transposons are evolution's answers. Random mutations with strict natural selection constrain evolution's inherent direction. Brand new adaptations are often emergent, but not anything goes, being widely convergent. We may wonder amazed, but should not look askance at the fruitful interplay, lawfulness, and chance. This should never be controverted mystery. Authentic God creates authentic history. Can we expect newness from constrained happenstance? Has God charted ways through this molecular dance? A chance and necessity, telos embedded. Their author must know where phylogony's headed.
Yep.
Maybe we should stop there. And excuse my non-Australian accent. I'm sure you'd like to say askance and chance, but this is just the way I was doing.
Yeah, well, it's all English to me, unfortunately.
it.
You got the wrong interlocutor. Oh wow. Yeah. Well, now I recognize once again because after I don't know a couple of weeks or so since I last read your poem, as I said during our first meeting, I did that like 3 times. Yeah, it's obvious that the reader who has the interest and is patient and equipped to read the article should do so, because so far what you said, at least in this stanza and all those that preceded and have something to do with biology, broadly conceived. You find there, details, information to ground this poetic narrative in, well, science. Okay, so we have already anticipated with your points and my whatever amazement coming up, ignorance. We have anticipated some aspects. What else would you like to point out in regard to this stanza, Graeme?
Yeah. Well, just one thing. I mean, it did express some amazement last time we spoke, at how the first eukaryotic cell was probably a collaborative effort between different bacteria who came to live in close association, such that they developed into different organelles. The chloroplasts, the mitochondria are involved in energy, and the nucleus. We can think here of a continuation of that process. In that viruses, which are generally considered, or many of them are pathological, but they have also now entered into some sort of a collaborative relationship with the host genomes in which they live. So as they reproduce transposons and viruses, just because that's their nature to do so, nevertheless, they synergize and they can contribute towards the development and to the elaboration of genetic functions. So again, it's another example of synergism between different parts of biological reality. Things working together.
And something that, well, in a way is extraneous. It doesn't belong, for example, to my body, a virus, while causing perhaps some damage, depending on the virus.
Yeah.
In reality, elicits some kind of response from my own body, from my own physiology, that leads to change. And these changes sometimes are perhaps so radical that they stamp my being, my body, in such a way that they can be conveyed to the next generation. Is this how things work?
Yes, I think so, yes.
And
yes.
Something that from a certain viewpoint might be seen as an invasion,
Yep.
Turns to something, well, hopefully positive on a long run, if that mutation, that change proves to be useful.
Yes,
Because
exactly.
it's incorporated into the genome somehow. I don't know, perhaps this isn't the right word. Into, I don't know, the flow of life, in our physiology, and turns out to help us develop certain, I don't know, aptitudes.
Yes, new features, really. I mean, for example, taking retroviruses, they have their own genetic control elements, which are part of their DNA structure. But once these are present in the human genome, they can be taken over or incorporated or co-opted by the cellular mechanism to control native genes. So the virus can contribute a whole lot of genetic elements, which are ready-made almost in many cases, and can facilely reorganize host genomes, and therefore can produce probably bursts of speciation, bursts of evolution when there is a requirement for it. So they affect evolvability. So it's random, but it's tunable.
And the mechanisms that lead to this tuning up or of the impact of a virus that invades the body, are they known to us? Do they emerge together with the problem, or are they there like a, I don't know, safety net that helps us overcome that impact and turn things for the better? I don't know.
I suppose the viruses just do their own thing. They operate independently. They they just propagate themselves. So they're not there for us, but they can at times be used to improve our fitness. As far as transposons are concerned, they just arise randomly and they jump randomly. But it seems that every species tolerates them because they fulfill a function of conferring evolvability. So wherever you look, there are jumping genes and viruses. Wherever you look, even though they're genome disruptors. Yeah. So we come back to this chance and necessity thing. And the other thing I'd like to say, authentic God creates authentic history. The history might worry some people. You know, it's just this mix of randomness and they don't like it. But surely an authentic history does refer us to God. I've looked at one of my books. This is a precious book called New and Greater Things, which I've cited already, by my former professor of theology at the University of South Africa. And I think some of this new and greater things, it's how God brings new things out of old. The new things are greater. And he writes this: God does not jettison the works of his hands or abandon them. The new earth is still this earth. The glorified man still this man. But the new earth has been made new, and man has been resurrected to a new glorified life. In fact, it was in Israel that this concept of history developed. The understanding that history is not cyclic so that it perpetually repeats itself, but a purposeful process of constantly new situations under God's direction. A process that will reach finality in the fulfillment of the covenant in the overall total sovereignty kingdom of God. And then he says, to describe the Greek idea of a cyclic concept of time and history, the eternal repetition and return of unchangeable things is correct. Consciously or unconsciously, history teachers often lend support to it with the dictum that history repeats itself. But in that dictum, there is little space for genuine biblical renewal or real change. So to us as Christians, history is linear. It doesn't necessarily mean that things are always improving. I think that's an Enlightenment idea. But they are moving towards God's consummation. Even when we look so far back, when the future is unimaginable. Unimaginable if you were a cosmic fly on the wall. But there is one who has set things up and who knows where phylogeny is headed. We see that by faith, of course. You can't prove that scientifically. It's not a scientific idea. But once we read the Bible, then we interpret science, say, this carries with it the development of creation.
I have always been amazed, although always bored too, by biblical genealogies.
Yep.
And of course, we have lots of Toledot, whatever, from Genesis onwards. Perhaps those aren't the best example. But from my viewpoint, the two genealogies of the Lord in the New Testament, in Matthew and Luke, are the best exemplification of this process. Because we see all those generations of, well, sinners, failures, failed specimens of a fallen race. Yeah. And you see how in some generations there are some, I don't know, well, forms of advancement, progress, spiritual progress, Enoch, Moses, whatever, Abraham, and so on and so forth. And then some generations, there's a downwards movement, with the ancestors of the Lord getting more and more sinful, more and more depraved.
Yeah.
And yet, all this history, which is random because these people are endowed with well, let's say free will in this case, but they misuse it. This freedom, regardless of how bad turns out to be in terms of its outcomes, is still turned for a better outcome through the providence of the Lord, and the Lord makes a different kind of history out of that pile of manure. Because to return to an aspect of our discussion last time. Yeah. And this is what you are saying here. It's a process, a history that unfolds within us, within every living being, where there's chance, there's this accident, the invasion of some viruses, but this local catastrophe can still be changed into something positive for the species, perhaps on the long run, and within the same parameters of a Lord of history.
I think it's in Isaiah 41, where most translations say, God, speaking for God, do I not bring out the generations one after another? But the Good News Bible says, do I not control history?
Oh, wow.
I think it's maybe a slightly free translation, but it catches that idea, doesn't it? I mean, the details, of course, God does not control, because evil people arise and things like that, and God is not responsible for that. But the direction it takes, the long-term direction.
Perhaps it's but better than control. It would be, the concept of transfiguration. By the way, today in my church tradition, we have celebrated the Lord's transfiguration, which is such a powerful illustration of the glory to which we are called out of this stuff that we are now, And so what the Lord does in history is not perhaps control, because we are still free, but transfigures everything, turning things from this old pile of manure into the new creation. Oh, wow. Now I understand why you like biology and viruses and all this kind of stuff, cell biology. And you said you are not a geneticist, but I don't believe you.
I'm just a cell biologist. I mean, I'm not a geologist either. The next stanza features this stuff. I'm not a geologist, but I have followed it with amazement over the last 30 or 40 years, just trying to read what I can in the scientific literature. So maybe we should look at that, Doru.
Okay.
Because this brings us to a very particular instant, which is not biological.
Yep, and it's an instance of a catastrophic incident.
Catastrophic, yes. And maybe one or two words of explanation.
Please.
Iridium is a rare metal on Earth, but there is a thin layer of highly anomalous iridium between two major strata of rock at what's called the Cretaceous-Paleogene boundary. And studying that iridium layer led some geologists 30 or 40 years ago to propose that an enormous meteorite impacted Earth 66 million years ago. Well, now it's 66 million years ago. So that's what the next little bit's about. Extraordinary story. Then a roadblock descends to Philogenes' rise. Asteroid megadeath screaming in from the sky. Iridium spike twixt KPG rock strata, Cretaceous Paleogene. Asteroid impact, incriminating data. There's a layer of glass spherules from condensed molten rock, deformed crystalline quartz, sign of high pressure shock. A 200-kilometer crater, Earth obliquely whacked. Dinosaurs extinguished by asteroid impact that jolted the Earth 66 million years past, nearly wiping out life by its staggering blast. Organic forms of Earth are under cosmic fire. Are not future prospects dishearteningly dire? Can life on Earth endure when it is bolide zapped? Dare we hope creation's God has a future mapped? Is this roasted planet with all its Sturm and Drang reason why the angels at creation sang? A blast 100,000 billion joules, perhaps. That's another of God's. So an amazing phenomenon.
You know,
amazing science.
Sorry to barge in, but you know what I realized is how traditional your approach to this story is. I have become recently aware through being prompted by a friend who studies manuscripts of the Physiologus. I think I mentioned this, the first scientific, call it textbook, written by Christians from the 2nd century onwards, because it was edited and redrafted and so on and so forth. And
Clement and Origen, is it?
We don't know who put together the Physiologus, so it's an anonymous work, and it has its own evolution, its own history, because it was redrafted several times at least. But the idea is that how the chapters proceed there's the description of the object, whatever. It's an animal, it's a plant, it's a rock, whatever, and description according to the available science, of course. And then comes a, let's call it theological, ethical, sometimes spiritual interpretation. And you're following the same patterns. You give us the scientific narrative and then ask rhetoric questions that pertain to what for, who's doing it, is there a sense to all these? Sorry for the digression.
Fair enough. Yeah.
Back to you.
So yeah, I mean it's an extraordinary thing. Two major papers have just come out since this poem was published, looking at the effect of the impact, the 66 million year impact on bird evolution and on mammal evolution. And it seems that with bird evolution, a whole lot of features of birds were favored, which resulted in now the spectacular diversity of birds, 10,000 species of birds, perhaps partially influenced by this random event. And with mammals, there is an average increase in the rate of speciation, new species forming, associated with the impact. And that's largely because slowly speciating groups of mammals died out, leaving the more rapidly speciating groups of mammals. So what seems to have been just a colossal disaster.
A cosmic virus.
Yes, a cosmic virus indeed. Seems to have been used by this marvelous thing called life, which I do not understand why it is just so fecund, just so bursting forth to promote the evolution of species. So God is not thwarted by major disasters, but in fact turns them, or in the way he has set up his world, they issue in new possibilities.
New possibilities. Always the new creation, the same concept of new creation.
Right. Yeah.
But in this case, yeah, I mean, you're right to highlight the catastrophic dimension of this event. It caused a major extinction event, and yet even that makes room for something new.
Yes.
Giving a chance to the underdog to become a dog.
That's right. Yes, indeed. Yeah.
And so we are actually the offspring, the outcome of that terrible event.
Yes. Yes, primates are a very speciose group of animals. The rodents, generally the eutherian mammals have done very well since that impact, whereas marsupial mammals suffered much more severely. We still have marsupials. I'm sure the Australians are very pleased, but it was eutherian mammals with fully placental reproductive systems which flourished, relatively flourished after the Bolide impact.
So this is why practically, in order to understand ourselves, we need what they call deep time or big history.
Yes, that would be true. I mean, coming back to the structure of the stability of DNA, most of the genes in our genome, they may have changed a little bit, but they are still very recognizable. The families of homeobox genes, which form our body plan, they are still very recognizable from deep time. You mentioned deep time, that's what triggered it, before the Himalayas existed.
Oh, wow. Wow.
The Himalayas have only been there for 50 million years, but our genes are still, in many cases, recognizably the same from before that. The Bolide impact was before the Himalayas existed, when these genetic changes occurred, which increased the rate of species.
So this prompts a strange thought. Life is conservative on its, I don't know, on the level of its foundations, but so dynamic and prolific and fruitful and strange, let's say on a macro level. So where does evolution come here? You said on a cellular level, we are the same as we've been. I mean, life has been long before the Himalayas existed.
Many of our genes are recognizably the same long before the Himalayas existed. You have eukaryotic cells, another tenfold more ancient than those, before the Cambrian explosion. We're going back to Precambrian times, 500 million years ago. That's when you started having complex cells such as we have in our bodies.
So what we call evolution is more like a rearrangement of these building blocks that don't change.
Well, they change, but some of the basic plans are very, very ancient. I mean, there's been, the age of life is believed to be something like 3.6 to 3.9 billion years. That's life, which is ridiculous because that's only a few 100 million years after the Earth was formed. So how can life form in that toxic environment in such a relatively short time? But I mean, this is still a mystery. And as I said last time, if people ever find it out, surely I will just worship, because there should be the organization of our universe and of chemistry. It must have been amazing. And as a Christian, I just see this, whatever is found out, to represent the very brilliant mind of God.
Wow. Everything is so complex. There are things that barely change, but then they organize themselves differently, and therefore you have, based on the same building blocks, you have so many species and variations within species and so on and so forth. I'm not equipped with the right vocabulary. And there's something almost always the same and always different at the same time. This requires, to use your metaphor of the mind, this requires a mind that has no analogy among the things we know of. Could the absence of that mind explain the processes that you refer to today?
I guess that's the ultimate metaphysical question, isn't it? There are no, I'm quoting here from other people, there are no compelling reasons to believe in a God of science. I mean, there are clever atheists, informed atheists. So my interpretation is coming from my understanding of the way this God works in Israel's and the history of Jesus especially. So what I can say is that there seems to be a wonderful congruence between the way the universe's history and human history unfolds. A wonderful congruence. So, I mean, that satisfies me. I think that makes for a very cogent worldview. But there is no knockdown proof. There cannot be that a God has done this.
I think that's liberating. Sorry to cut you short again.
No, that's true.
I think that's liberating, because sometimes in our simplistic drive to explain everything, kill mysteries, extinguish whatever we don't understand, we rush to find room for the so-called God of the gaps. And that's, again, very dangerous for faith itself. So we should actually humble ourselves before this tremendous mystery of everything that is uncreated and created, and shut up. This is why they invented mysticism, you know.
Yes, apophatic theology.
Mysticism means actually to shut up, and apophaticism literally means the same. Shut up. Just allow this mystery to overwhelm you and participate rather than rationalize. When we rationalize, we take the either-or route, and we end up saying stupid, superficial, very unsatisfactory things about reality, about God, about everything. So your story, your narrative, your primal testament actually teaches us the apophatic way, just to take notes but don't draw conclusions.
Maybe, yeah. Just to see the congruence. Yeah. I mean, the late Owen Gingerich was professor of astronomy at Harvard. Lovely Christian man. He died a few months ago. And he says that science can only take us to a God of very large numbers. He says the God of, Polkinghorne has also said this. Science can only take us to the cosmic architect or the cosmic mathematician. The God and Father of our Lord Jesus Christ must be found by some other means. And similarly, I'm always impressed by what Stanley Hauerwas and William Willimon have said, and these are two American theologians, who've said many Christians have fallen into the trap of trying to prove that God exists. That's not our brief. Our role is to show what kind of God exists. And this God is the God of love. The God, yes, where does love come from? Where does justice come from? And mercy and compassion and holiness and joy and goodness. This is the God of Calvary. This is the God and Father of Jesus and of Isaiah. This is the God we need to show to the world, and the God by whom I interpret my science.
So from this viewpoint, the primal testament teaches us that our efforts, apologetic efforts, to prove rationally through the means of the so-called natural theology, the existence of God is actually a futile undertaking.
If by natural theology you mean the attempt to prove God,
that's
yes, I think that's right. It can tell us some things about how God works. But again, I'm drawing from John Polkinghorne and others in this. But yes, looking at this great cosmic history through the eyes of faith, I wonder, I marvel, because it seems to point to me as a mind that looks to the future, that looks beyond the mysteries, at unspeakable, unimaginable developments. But I think is a danger to try to prove that God exists from it. And I think, if I may just say so, I think this is where creationists and intelligent design people make a terrible mistake, because they try to prove a cosmic designer who could be a mouse or a spaceman or an alien or a committee. And so utterly even if they could do so, they've missed the point. We start off with our understanding of the God revealed in Jesus, and then look back at history and say, wow, there's all of this history heading towards this amazing revelation.
There was people who would try to prove the existence of God based on, I don't know, discovery, research, logic, philosophy, and so on and so forth, but have no sense of faith. I know Anselm of Canterbury started, he put the whole European history on the path of trying to prove rationally the existence of something that goes beyond any reason. So all this stuff that sort of is part and parcel of our psyche, or the psyche of many Christians actually, is a bad detour into the Badlands, because we actually should seek that encounter with God in Christ and his Holy Spirit, rather than trying to turn rocks and look for the signature God was here or something like that. Graffiti, divine graffiti.
Well, they're going back to St. Anselm. I mean, he said, I believe that I may understand. So although people might have, he might have started a tradition which was excessively intellectual, yet there are variations of that saying, aren't there? I believe that I may understand. I mean, this is really where we are. I believe in the God revealed in Jesus, but in doing so, I can look at this history and understand that it is purposeful. So faith comes first. I can't anchor my faith upon it. When I have faith in this God revealed in the scriptures, and then look back at the Bolide, and yes, then I can understand that perhaps this was another of God's tools.
You have no idea how much you helped me today. I think, I don't know, I mentioned this or not. I struggled to finish a book on Clement of Alexandria's theory of nature contemplation. And I was uneasy about something that he says about the disciplines, whatever sciences were available in late antiquity, that they have a propedeutic quality, but they cannot be, in other words, they prepare us for faith, for, let's call it a theological outlook, and so on and so forth. But they are just preparatory. They can push us that far, or whatever it was the phrase you used before.
Yeah.
And now I think I understand why he says that, because in reality, regardless of how sharp and insightful and precise a science might get, it still cannot find that signature, that divine graffiti saying God was here.
Right.
And therefore, what they do, the sciences, they prepare us, because they put us in touch with a reality full of mystery. And they amaze us by the things that they can explain and the many things they cannot explain. But they cannot lead us to the conclusion, okay, this is it. God was here. And now I understand. So it helped me immensely, really. Thank you very much. It helps me make sense of why he says, well, the disciplines are only preparatory, but they do not put us face to face with God. And so, again, because I have friends who are very interested in the revived natural theology these days, I think it's bad news for them. Because a natural theology that is supposed to prove God's existence by, I don't know, doing science, good science, that's a futile expectation. That's a false hope. Wow, this is immense. I'm certain that many people will hate us for what we said today. At least my conclusions. Yeah.
But again, the natural theology, when we hold it under the faith that we have in the God who reveals himself, it does help us to understand. We do relate creation to the God who has revealed himself in the prophets of Israel and of Jesus Christ. So it does enable us to form a continuous narrative, which I guess is what the poem is all about. This is a continuous narrative. But the first parts are all questions. Well, even the latter parts are questions. I mean, as we'll maybe next time, if there's a next time, the history of Israel is God in this. It's ended up a mess. It's a disastrous, tragic story. Is God in this? Let's move forward And we get to Jesus and we get to the cross and we say, well, it's God on this, it's a disaster. And then we get to Easter Sunday. And so we move forward. And then we get to the failures of the church. Is God on this? And we can still look forward to what he's still doing.
As you say there, a blessed 100,000 billion joules, perhaps, just perhaps, is another of God's tools.
Yeah.
But
Right.
we cannot ask this question or suggest this possibility without looking at the cross of Christ. So faith comes
I
first.
guess to an atheist, it still is it's a remarkable fact. But it's just a brute fact. Atheists are left with lots of brute facts. That's just the way it is. But as a Christian, I can say, well, from what I know of God, maybe this fits into the meta-narrative of God and his creation. So I don't have brute facts. The only brute fact is God, the one who's revealed himself in love and holiness.
Would you like a challenge? Bolide related, but not that one. Another.
Okay. What shot from the blue were you coming up with, Doru?
Well, apparently that area of whatever the Gulf of Mexico, that area is favored by by asteroids and comets and that. At some point in history, but perhaps not 66 million years ago. Oh, yeah, that's the number.
Yeah, 66 now. Yep, that's a number.
Okay. Perhaps a bit more recently, apparently something else fell in that area.
Okay.
That so much more recently, actually, that favored the rise out of nothing, as it were, of the Maya civilization and the Aztecs and all those, all of them civilizations of gold. And apparently, it was an asteroid that fell somewhere in the Yucatan Peninsula that provided them with an easy to retrieve source of gold.
Okay.
And, determined the flourishing of those civilizations. But, and now comes my challenge, the same gold proved to be their doom, because when the Spaniards arrived, well, lots of gold here.
Yeah.
And that caused another extinction, but it wasn't by the cosmic virus, it was caused by human viruses. How do you compute this? Is there anything in the Primal Testament that helps us make sense of this kind of tragedy that unfolded, you know, when you have a bunch of savages from Europe coming to destroy a civilization together with its bearers?
No, I don't think there are simple answers to that, because most of history just follows its own track, and it's very hard to see purposiveness in a lot of those events. I mean, there is no purposiveness. Think of all the empires of the world. You know, what the Majapahit empires of Indonesia have to do with God's purposes? I guess we just say that I don't know. I don't know.
Perhaps America is the positive outcome of all that massacre.
Sorry, of which?
Of that massacre, America.
Yes. Oh, well, I don't know that that's a good outcome. But you know, I was just thinking before today, maybe this is my last shot. People point the finger, a lot of atheists, a lot of unbelievers, at God. Life seems to be so dispensable. It's so, you can discard it. I can't worship a God, they say, who has made life so disposable. And we do. We see disposable life all around us, as you say, with the wars of human beings and bolide impacts and things like that, and dog eating dog. My answer to that one is perhaps this is the preparatory stage, if you really, what you're really complaining about is life which is mortal, life which is biological. Richard Dawkins hates life which is mortal because he won't believe in a God who's made life so disposable. For those people, I have this to say. Hang on, wait. God's plan is to confer immortality, and he has done this through Jesus. And if Richard Dawkins and his ilk are going to be honest, they say, well, I have to look at this because I've been demanding that sort of test. But what do they say? I don't believe in the resurrection. So they reject God because of mortality, and they laugh at God because of immortality.
Very well put. Thank you so much, Graeme. So much to think about. Thank you very much for.
Well, again, I'm just feeling my way, Doru.
Well, yeah, that's what we do. But at least we do it within some parameters that help us ask some questions and perhaps hint to some possible responses.
Hopefully, they're biblical parameters. Yeah.
Well, biblical parameters or otherwise, because I, as an Orthodox, I have a slightly broader framework.
Yeah. Okay. Yes.
Where the scriptures are present and integral and central to the whole project, so to speak. But they aren't the only criterion. Like in Luke 24, which is one of my favorite passages with the two disciples running away for their life towards Emmaus. And of course, there's someone, the teacher, who joins them to give them a sense of how to read the scriptures, open their minds to understand the scriptures, if that's what the text says. But alongside that, there's the traveling together. And I believe that whether or not this is a biblical thing that we do, we are traveling together. So the two of us, that's ecclesia. And this is why the icon is there, so that it visual. Wow. Yeah. Do you see that?
Well,
right.
yes, I did.
Well, I've never seen that one before. Anyway, because the icon visualizes what we know it's there, but we don't see. So there's the walking together. There's the Lord joining us because we are in his name. And in his presence, there are almost simultaneously a few things happening. One of them is the burning of the hearts. That is an internal experience that signals the presence of the Lord and has nothing to do with whatever sciences can explain or not, or measure. And there's this other charismatic experience, which we shouldn't discard, that the Lord opened their minds. It's a gift. Otherwise, the book is dead. We need the insight and the guidance of he who is the Word of God. And then there's the joy of fellowship at the supper when he breaks the bread and shares it with them. So that's my framework. Of course, it's recorded in the scriptures, but personally, I do not reduce it to the actual message of the scriptures, because all those things still happen. We travel together. And if we travel in the Lord's name, he is there. And
the Logos is Jesus.
Yeah. Yes.
That's the word of God.
Yes. Anyway, I don't think this is the right conclusion for our beautiful and exciting discussion today, but I'm still grateful.
I'm privileged.
Thank you very much, Graeme.
God bless you, Doru.
Time, everyone. Again, hitting the button, which is always a challenge for me. There it is.